The Utah Utes picked up an elite recruit in the 2027 class who could be the next mayor of Sac Lake City.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. I'm JT Wistrcill, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. I'm excited to be joined on today's show by Ethan Pearce, UteZone contributor. We're going to talk some basketball on today's show. A local star is coming back to Utah, but not the Salt Lake City, Utah. He's probably going to end up in Provo. That's not good. Also, talk about Terrence Brown, top scorer from a year ago, arguably top player. He's in the portal as well. And we're going to start with some really good news, though. Utah landing an elite defensive end recruit. But first, I want to tell you guys this episode of Locked On Utes brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Ethan, last year, the Utah Utes landed the top player in the state of Idaho, and they did so well last year, landing Kelvin Obot, who's already rolling in spring ball, that they were able to do it again. They landed the top player in the 2027 class in the state of Idaho in Jack Henderson. 3-star defensive end, commits to Utah football, 6'3.5", 230 pounds, 3-star prospect. He's a top 75 player at his position, but as we said, the top player in the state of Idaho. I love that the Utah Utes are already gaining traction on the recruiting trail. You see a lot of this pick up over the summer, but hey, early April, landing a recruit, top player in the state, not too shabby, Ethan.
Yeah, no, this is really good. I think that he seems like one of those players that is a prototypical Utah recruit. They have done really well in recruiting this type of player in the past and developing them into NFL caliber talent. So, Jack Henderson looks like a really exciting prospect to come to Utah. One of the first big hitters of Morgan Scalley's recruiting cycle. And I'm excited to see what they can do with him because he looks like a really, big athletic guy that can wreak some havoc if he gets some more development.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I think he does need development, and he's a 3-star for a reason. I don't look at him and go, boom, right away, instant impact guy. But what you do see when you turn on the tape is plays with a good motor, solid bend around the edge, a hard worker, a guy who's got good hands, violent hands, I'd even say, too. Good job recognizing plays, just good football IQ, too, not fooled easily by fakes, very disciplined, doesn't quit. If you noticed, a theme there frequently was just how hard he plays. I've talked about this before with other recruits. Yes, talent is awesome. Talent is outstanding. But give me a guy who's going to come in, going to buy in and get after it. And that's what Henderson is going to be. You're not the biggest, you're not the fastest, you're not the strongest, but you're still solid in those areas. I'll take that. I'm okay with that as long as you're willing to come in and put in the work. And he's willing to do that. Yep. And yes, I know he's a 3-star guy, but at the same time, I look at the past of some of these guys is like for you that Utah's recruited. Brett Keithy was a 2-star. I think Devin Lloyd might have been a no-star, like some order of these guys. Yep. Like when Utah finds a guy, and they're his best offer, but when Utah finds a guy and they like him, I tend to feel good about that too. So I love that Coach Gross, this is kind of his area. He knows Idaho, Utah's offensive line coach, able to bring him in. Excited to see what Utah's defensive end coach, Enoch Brockfield, can do with him too. But I love what you said, Ethan. This just feels like a Utah guy, right?
Yeah, totally. And another good sign, I think, is that this is the top prospect in the state of Idaho. Just good that Utah is able to maintain their recruiting influence in the western half of the United States, right? Mm-hmm. Because Idaho is one of our neighbors, not any Power 5 program in the state. So getting those guys who are elite from this side of the country to want to come to Utah, I think is another huge boon for them. So good to see that Scalley can kind of keep that train going.
Yeah, and I think Jordan Gross is very connected in the state of Idaho from his time coaching there. I think that will continue to be a place that Utah does a good job in. And I think this is the type of guy that Coach Gross knows very well, knows the commitment very well. Obviously, Utah's watched the film, studied up on him too. So when I see, yes, Utah is by far his best offer. He has Washington State on there, Fresno State, San Jose State, Air Force. So to me, it's like, oh, well, why is Utah the only one offering him? Well, to me, I look at that and I also go, hey, Utah maybe sees something before everyone else does too. Because as I mentioned, when I turn on the tape, I see a guy who gets after it and I think can get after it at the next level. I tend to believe in and trust guys like this with a motor like his. So to me, it's not always bad when it's like, ooh, Utah's not beating out other P4 teams. They're the only P4 team that offers him. It also can mean Utah's just more plugged in and they see how good this guy is. They have the people, the boots on the ground there. We already mentioned Jordan Gross to know just how good this guy is. And I would rather get in the door too early than too late, especially in recruiting, Ethan.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, in recruiting, you're really just, taking as many flyers on guys as you can, right? It's not like you're not doing your research and, picking the best players to come to your team, but especially with, Utah in a big state of flux right now with so many holes to fill on the roster and the amount of turnover that they've had. It just makes a lot of sense to, try to take the guys that you most believe in. But if it doesn't work out, then it is what it is, right? There's always going to be more players coming down the line and filling those holes. And so we're going to see, Utah's going to have a big crop of brand new players on the roster, and whoever ends up popping and becoming key rotational pieces and contributing, that's going to be those guys who work the hardest and hit their potential. So we're just hoping Henderson can be one of those guys.
Yeah, recruiting is something like you mentioned. You're just throwing a lot of darts at the board, and you're hoping some of them hit, right? You're going to have misses. You're going to have hits. Not everyone that Utah brings in is going to turn out to be the next Spencer Fano, right? You have guys that come in, and even after a year, they transfer. That's just become all too prevalent in the case far too frequently we've seen now in this world of college sports. But at the end of the day, you got to build up and overall this roster, because also recruiting is still very important. Yes, you can bring in guys through the transfer portal to fill needs, but you still need those guys in-house that you've grown and you've developed. I think about Utah football this year, right? They're after bringing in a lot through the transfer portal. I talked about in a past show, the 23 class isn't outstanding for Utah, but Utah's offensive line is going to be made up of a lot of returners that haven't seen a lot of action, but Utah's been growing and developing. So when guys moved on, they were ready to step in and step up. That's what I feel like this Utah team has done a good job of consistently over the years. It's why they haven't had to have a Colorado season where it's boom, we got to bring in 50 guys through the transfer portal. I think Rich Rod brought in 80 at West Virginia last year. It doesn't usually work out that well, that great. What you want to do if you're Utah is you want to have a group of guys that you are like, hey, this is the positions of need we need to bring in the transfer portal, but we also have this section of people that we are bringing, that we have brought on, recruited, and developed so they're ready when the time is right to take over. And I feel like there's so many examples of that throughout Utah football. Ethan, I think about Francis Bernard first, then it was Devin Lloyd stepping in at that spot, right? This Utah football team recruiting and developing has allowed them to remain one of the elite programs in the West.
Yeah, and I mean, that's how you have sustained success in this era of college football, right? And college sports in general. I think that trying to build a team entirely out of the transfer portal on the fly is most of the time not going to work. It's going to be hard to get that continuity, get the chemistry together of those guys, and try to replace every single position every offseason, right? Like Utah, you're going to have guys graduating, you're going to have guys transferring out, in and out. But what you want is that you want players who have been around, they know the system, they know the coaches, they've been there for a couple of years and have worked hard and developed and are ready to step up when their number is called, as they enter, their second or third year of college football, having not played a ton. Maybe those guys are now ready to play when the opportunity knocks.
And I hope that opportunity comes for Henderson. This is a guy I'm going to keep tabs on. I'm excited to see how he continues to grow and develop. 6'3.5", as we mentioned, 230 pounds, and absolutely gets after it. A guy who puts in the time, puts in the energy, puts in the work, is disciplined. And yes, he's not ready to be a day one starter, but I think give him time. He can impact with this Utah football program. Terrence Brown made an impact with the Utah men's basketball program. Won't be making one in 2027. He's off to the transfer portal. Is this a big loss for Utah? What should we make of it? We'll talk about it momentarily. This episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player trends, matchups, all in one place. And during the playoffs, the extra insight really makes a difference. When you're looking at star role players and key moments, FanDuel has you covered. Just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Yes, the Jazz aren't going to the playoffs, but how about the New York Knicks, the Boston Celtics? Who's coming out of the East? In the West, Wemby and the Spurs coming on strong. Jokic and the Nuggets looking really good too. Lakers banged up, but it's still anyone's matchup in the West, and we know Thunder are always looming too. You can head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game today with FanDuel Sportsbook. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. I want to remind you, Locked On Utes Every Day Club is live. You can head over to LockedOnUtes.supercast.com today to join. What you get access to is a Discord chat with myself and other Utah fans. You will also get an ad-free audio version of this podcast. To learn more, check the episode description below or head over to LockedOnUtes.supercast.com today. Ethan, it's been a large exodus for Utah in the portal. Not surprising. I think it's 49% of scholarship players I saw or heard something like that are in the transfer portal right now. So it's just absolutely insane how wild the portal's going. Terrence Brown is going to be the latest. Utah's leading scorer from a year ago, averaged 19 a game. Came over from Fairleigh Dickinson. We weren't sure how exactly it was going to work out, and he put up big numbers. The Utes didn't win, though. I'm not shocked at all to see him enter the transfer portal. We'll talk about who he's hearing from, especially too, but this one doesn't shock me to see him go, Ethan.
Yeah, no, me neither. I think after the year that Utah had, worst team in the Big 12, tough season under the first year under Alex Jensen. Brown really showed what he can do, right? Like he showed that he can score a bunch of points and be efficient while doing so. And he had a good season. It makes a lot of sense for him to test the transfer waters, see if he can go somewhere where he can win. Also, rumors that he is testing the NBA draft waters as well. Going to see if he can, get some interest, some bites at the apple there. So we'll see what he ends up doing. There was also part of the report that he will remain in contact with Utah. So I guess there's a chance that he returns, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that.
Yeah, I ain't either, and I don't think any of you should after I read this list of schools that apparently he's heard from, according to the Rising Ballers Network. Terrence Brown tells the Rising Ballers Network he has heard from UNC, Oklahoma, USC, Louisville, Memphis, UCLA, Oregon, St. John's, Arkansas, Miami, NC State, Kansas, SMU, LSU, Oklahoma State, Mississippi State, Missouri. There is maybe one or two schools on that list that I would go, and actually probably only just Mississippi State, honestly, that I go, oh, Utah was better than them, or I think in a better, not better, but in a better spot, a comparable spot. Everyone else is better. I just have a very hard time believing Terrence Brown's going to come back and return to this team. You mentioned testing the pro waters too. To me, he's just not big enough to go pro yet. I would maximize college eligibility. I think he will get his best offers NIL-wise staying here too. I mean, he threw up 19 a game, 3 assists, shot 45% from the field, 33% from 3, 78 from the free throw line. And he's an interesting player because he averaged, I think it was 28 at Fairleigh Dickinson. And he proved he was still basically a 20-point-per-game scorer at the P4 level with Utah, but it didn't translate to wins. So I think the thing with Terrence Brown will be his next destination he goes to. It's, hey, can you take a step back scoring-wise because you're still going to get buckets, but you've proven if the ball rests in your hands for an entire game, and yes, all of Utah's losses were not on his shoulders, but if you hand him solely the keys of your offense, in some ways you are having a bottom P4 season, right? So that's where I'm very curious to see what he has to do with his next destination, but I don't feel like it's going to be put up 19 points per game again because we didn't see that go well, right, Ethan?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that wherever he ends up going, especially if it's, one of those schools on that long list that you read out, teams that are contending for March Madness and Sweet 16s at Elite Eights, right? He is definitely more suited as a 6-man role, kind of a spark plug guy that's going to come in off the bench, really light it up. Like, think Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford, like in that archetype, right? Like those guys that we saw in the NBA and in college basketball over the years. Coming off the bench, get hot, see if you can, score 10, 12 points in a row and really swing the game in your favor. So I think that a lot of teams are looking for that. And Terrence Brown can totally be the guy that can do that if that's the role that he's willing to accept. And I think that's what's going to help him be the most successful is a 6-man spark plug off the bench kind of scorer guy.
Agreed. Is this a loss for Utah? Of course. He averaged 19 points per game. But at the same time, Ethan, when you're as bad as Utah is, you needed to change things. And I think that it's okay that Terrence Brown is moving on. As I mentioned, Utah would be better if he were to stay. But there's no question in my mind, as we just talked about, his role would have to change in order for this team to win too. He obviously has his defensive limitations. He's a fantastic scorer, but at the same time, his height does present some problems in some big moments and things of that nature. And Terrence Brown proved everyone wrong and said he couldn't play at this level. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but I'm also just calling it a spade a spade. Utah was the worst Big 12 team this past season. He was the leading scorer on that squad. So that's where things have to change. I think it's okay that Seydou Traore is in the portal. Now, almost everyone's in the portal for Utah men's basketball. And we just talked about with football, I don't love when you have to tear things down completely, but I'll be honest, like in basketball, it's even worse. Like almost everyone has to restart in basketball. Not everyone, but most of people lose a lot of their players in basketball. So do I love that Utah is restarting? Of course not. Do I think they're going to make the NCAA tournament next year? No, I think that's what's hard about restarting is it's just hard to do that when you hit the reset button. But at the same time, it was a failure. There were misses in recruiting, and there's just things that need to change. And I think Utah men's basketball, it's okay that we're seeing a lot of these guys exit, Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because this past offseason, we saw a bunch of turnover and a brand new team for Alex Jensen's first season as the coach of the Utes. And this summer we're going to see a lot more changeover and a brand new roster. I guess it just leaves me with the question, like, what exactly did Utah accomplish this season? Did they like get a good look at any players that are going to be a core part of their future? Not really.
No.
Did they make a splash in the Big 12? Absolutely not. Did they make March Madness? No. So if they lose every player in their rotation and have to build a brand new team, like what did they accomplish in 2025-26? Like it just seems like they're not making any progress, making any, moves towards being a better team. And I think that's what's really frustrating for a lot of fans. So like in a vacuum, Terrence Brown leaving doesn't really matter, right? But I think that if you have another offseason of just massive roster turnover and kind of a directionless team, it just becomes tough for people to become engaged with them.
Yeah, I've seen people say this is a critical offseason for Alex Jensen. I don't know if I necessarily feel that way just because it is only year 2. Like, even if we're the worst team in the Big 12 again, I think next year would be a critical offseason if with back-to-back seasons bottom out, because then I think he's on the hot seat. I don't think he's on the hot seat right now. I think that he has time to build this roster, to work things out. I mean, honestly, if anyone should be on the hot seat a little bit, and I'm not trying to call for anyone's job, but like Wes Wilcox was in charge of building this roster last year. And I think he clearly missed a lot in recruiting. I'm not saying he should be on the hot seat, but I'm saying when we assign blame for last season, I personally put a little bit more on Wes Wilcox because that's your role as the GM. And I know Alex Jensen knows how to coach college basketball. How to coach basketball. Is he a good college coach? That remains to be seen. The Denver Nuggets, or not the Denver, UNC is going to find that out with Mike Malone here real soon, right? But it's not just Alex Jensen that has to do better. It's Rafael Chilius. It's the guy who was in here early as well too. It's Wes Wilcox. Rebuilding this team and this program starts with everyone, and it's unfortunate that it was such a bad misfire in year 1, Ethan, that we have to burn it all to the ground again.
Yeah, it stinks, right? Like we were hoping that we would at least see like, okay, here's a few players that they can cling on to and build around. And we can kind of see some growth from all of them going into next season and beyond. Right. But really, like, you have Don McHenry graduating, you have Terrence Brown and Seydou Traore transferring. Like those are the key players for your team. Like, I guess we haven't heard anything on Keanu Dawes yet. I'm not sure, but
he hit the portal too.
He did. Yeah. So it's going to be tough. We'll see what this team looks like next year, but it's going to be different again. And hopefully they can find some pieces because if they don't, it's just going to be a long, long season.
It will be. Real quick on Traore, I mentioned it. That's another starter with the portal. 9 points a game, 3.4 rebounds, 2 assists, 38% from the field. It feels like on a good Big 12 team, and maybe not even a good Big 12 team, right? Like I just have to, like the Seydou Traore train it's an up and down roller coaster. Sometimes it's awesome. I would say it was filled with more ups and downs, though. I think this is another one in Traore that I look at and I go, it's okay that he's moving on. I think on a good Big 12 team, he's probably coming off the bench, so I'm not shocked to see him depart either. How do you feel about that one, Ethan?
Yeah, I think he had a good season for them. He was a nice glue guy, a good wing that can, do a lot of things on both sides of the court, but I'm not necessarily surprised to see him transferring either. I think he's a guy that could go to, a team that's going to be in the mix for March Madness and really make an impact for them. So if he wants to win, like, not shocked that that's the choice he made.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like Utah's that team that's going to make an impact next March. I hope they are. I hope they find a way in this tournament. They got a long road to climb from worst to first. Why was it? I think it was 8 Big 12 teams made the NCAA tournament, I want to say. So Utah literally has to climb 8 spots next year if they want to get into that, even close to that range. Are they capable of doing it? We'll see. They're trying to build their roster for next year. Pretty important local star entered the transfer portal, and he's already crystal balled to somewhere that you and me and everyone listening to this podcast, it's Pro Utes, ain't going to like, and it's a problem that Utah's not even in the race.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. UCLA made history by winning its first NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship, dominating South Carolina 79-51. The Bruins controlled the game from start to finish with elite defense and balanced scoring, finishing the season 37-1. Star center Lauren Betts was named Most Outstanding Player, leading a team effort that capped a 31-game winning streak. Under head coach Corey Close, UCLA secured a landmark title that has been decades in the making. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes. I'm coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Colin Chandler was named Mr. Basketball in the state of Utah about, I'd say, 4 years ago now. Went on his LDS mission, was committed to BYU at the time. Mark Pope went to Kentucky. Chandler returned, followed him there, and it was fine. Nothing crazy. Obviously, Kentucky went through it a little bit this season. Chandler averaged 9 a game, 2 boards, 2 assists, 43% from the field. The 6'5", 205-pound forward, or guard, ended up in the portal. And I looked at that and I went, ooh, that'd be cool if Utah could maybe get in on the race for him. One problem, Ethan, already 100% crystal ball to BYU. This is a familiar story we're seeing far too many times. It's happened a little bit in football, but with the recruiting trail, high school wise. But now we see something like this. And we know BYU is a much better basketball program than Utah right now. But when you have a local guy and you can't even get in, and we'll wait and see how this all transpires, right? It's just a 24/7 sports crystal ball. But when you can't even get in the room with these guys, that's a problem, especially when you're not even on the same playing field, it appears, as someone in your state. This is just another reminder about the gap that exists between BYU and Utah, and in-state basketball. BYU's kicking Utah's butt right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth. It stinks. Like, in the case of Chandler, right, like, he was committed to BYU in the first place, you know? So, like, if he's going to come home, it makes sense that that's the school that he would pick. But the fact that, you're right, like, the fact that Utah can't even be in the mix for him, can't even, you know, be on the list of interest there when he enters the transfer portal, can't even get a meeting, like, it's just the reality of the situation for the best prospects in the state, right? Like, they're going to want to go somewhere where they can win. And right now, Utah is not that team. So it's tough.
And I mentioned Chandler didn't throw up crazy numbers, but to me, he's the classic case of, hey, a guy does go on his mission. Sometimes it does take guys time to get back to their level. Look at what Brandon Carlson did, like, from his first year on, like, year over year. He just got so much better. I think Chandler's going to be a similar thing and could very well be a huge thorn in Utah's side. Obviously, BYU believes in him. If he's already crystal balled to them, they're clearly willing to step up, and they just lost Rob Wright, so maybe they're getting a little bit worse. I think they will lose Dembonsa. I know he's talked a lot about, hey, I really enjoyed BYU, but you're going to be a top 3. Yeah, if you're a top 3 pick, like, what are you doing? But it's just, this is where it's tough. Like, I would love it if it was the case where it's, hey, it's like Utah and BYU neck and neck for these guys, but Utah just can't even, it feels like getting this conversation in the same room as the guys BYU is going to be able to, whether it's NIL, whether it's just basketball success, doesn't really matter. It's something that has to change. And Ethan, I think the only way Utah is going to be able to flip it in the long run is if they hit on those diamonds in the rough and they pull together a team that can win. Maybe that's how the NIL gets into a better shape too. And maybe if you win more too, it's more enticing to join this program, but it's a long road to climb.
They've got to prove that they can start winning. I think that's the bottom line. Like, you know, the money is good. Like, the team culture is good. Like people want to, like, prospects want to go play somewhere where they feel like they can win, but they also feel like they can make money, they can develop, they can become the best player that they can be, make it to the NBA, right? Like, all those things are in the calculus. And if you look at it objectively, like, what has Utah done in the last 10 years to prove that they are going to be better for a player like that than BYU or even Utah State, right? Because Utah State has been a team that's been in March Madness consistently with a number of different coaches, including Craig Smith. And Utah was not even able to do that with that same coach. So if you are one of the top prospects in the state of Utah, there's not a lot of reasons to pick the Utes right now.
No.
And that sucks.
It really does. It's very unfortunate. And you said to me what's the most important thing just for Utah basketball in general, because people talk all the time, like, how do we get fans back in the building? Like, take down the curtains and things of that nature. To me, it's not about because people will be like, oh, Utah does this wrong, like from an athletic department standpoint about like the game presentation. Like, it does, that's not important to me as much as, we can nitpick that stuff. It's win. It's put an exciting product on the floor, and Utah basketball just has not done that in far too long. It's a draw to go watch this football team play. Devin Dampier's out there, Kyle Winningham. They've won Pac-12 like in the past. That's what the draw is. What is the draw to Utah men's basketball? I don't even know how I'd start trying to sell this product. So I think the only way they can, Ethan, is what we're talking about. They have to just find a way to win games and become fun, because they have not been in far too long.
Yeah, and like, it's not that they haven't really been trying, right? Like, the move to go out and get Alex Jensen, like, that was something that a lot of fans had clamored for. Like, he's an NBA coach with a proven track record. Like, a guy that was supposed to come in and really turn this program around. And I'm not going to say that I'm out on him after just one season, right? But the results just haven't been there yet. So it does seem like Utah is trying to become that brand again and become that level of success. We haven't seen the results, and so hopefully this season they can look themselves in the mirror, acknowledge some of the mistakes that they made in recruiting and strategy this past year, and really rectify that and see what they can do going into next season, and hopefully end up being a little bit better. But if that's not the case, then you're just going to see more of their best commits and players transfer out of the program, and it's going to be tough.
It is going to be tough, and it's going to be a long road for Utah men's basketball to climb. See if they're able to climb it. Ethan, thank you so much for joining the show. Please let everyone know where they can find and follow you at.
UteZone.com. We'll have some breakdowns, hopefully this offseason, of all the crazy stuff that Utah's roster is going to go through, because it's going to be another summer of upheaval. So check out UteZone for that.
Ethan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you soon talking all things Utah athletics. A reminder, if you're in the market for a second listen every day, check out Locked On College Football. Locked On College Basketball, too, as you covered wild times with the portal ahead. And we're going to keep track of all the madness. And, of course, Utah spring football rolls on up on the hill. We'll be talking about it all on Locked On Utes tomorrow.